My name is Inez, and I'm 32 years old. Last Thanksgiving was different from any other holiday I've ever experienced. It was the moment everything I'd built in silence came crashing into the light, and the family that abandoned me suddenly wanted back in. What they discovered that day changed everything, but not in the way they hoped. Before I share what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how a wilderness nightmare became my greatest awakening. I need to take you back to understand how we got here. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, in a family that looked perfect from the outside. My parents, Robert and Diana, raised three daughters in a comfortable middle-class home with a white picket fence and annual family vacations. But perfection, I learned early, was just a carefully maintained illusion. I was the middle child sandwiched between Fiona, who was 4 years older, and Naomi, who was 3 years younger. In our family, being in the middle meant being invisible. Fiona was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She was beautiful, poised, and always said exactly what our parents wanted to hear. She was the daughter they showed off at dinner parties, the one whose school photos hung prominently in the living room. Naomi was the baby, the one who got away with everything because she was the youngest. She had big eyes and a sweet smile that could melt anyone's heart, especially our father's. Whatever Naomi wanted, Naomi got. And then there was me. I wasn't exceptional in the ways that mattered to my parents. I was smart, sure, but in a quiet, unassuming way that didn't translate well at country club gatherings. I preferred books to beauty pageants, computers to cotillions. My mother would sigh when I came downstairs in jeans instead of dresses. My father barely looked up from his newspaper when I brought home straight A's because Fiona had done the same thing years before, so it wasn't noteworthy anymore. I learned to take care of myself because no one else was paying attention. When I turned 15, I got a job at the local library shelving books. Not because we needed the money, but because I needed something that was mine. My own money, my own purpose, my own little corner of independence. I remember my 16th birthday. Fiona had gotten a car for hers. Naomi would later get a trip to Paris for hers. I got a card with $50 in it, and a distracted hug from my mother, who was too busy planning Fiona's engagement party, to remember that 16 was supposed to be special. I didn't cry. I'd learned by then that tears didn't change anything. College was my escape hatch. I chose a state school 3 hours away, far enough to breathe, but close enough that I couldn't be accused of abandoning the family. I majored in computer science partly because I loved it, and partly because it was so different from anything my sisters would do. It was mine. During my sophomore year, I met Julian at a campus charity event. He was an exchange student from Germany, studying engineering with kind eyes and an accent that made everything he said sound thoughtful. We bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared love of terrible coffee from the library vending machine. Julian was different from anyone I'd ever known. He came from a modest family, a school teacher mother and a carpenter father. He worked 2 jobs to afford his education and never complained. He listened when I talked, really listened, and he saw me in a way my own family never had. We fell in love slowly, carefully, like two people who'd both learned that good things could disappear if you grabbed them too hard. When I was 20, I brought him home to meet my family over winter break. I was nervous, but hopeful. Maybe they'd see what I saw in him. Maybe they'd be happy for me. I was so naive. My mother took one look at Julian, assessed his thrift store sweater and secondhand car, and I saw her face tighten. My father asked him about his major, his prospects, his family's background. The interrogation lasted through dinner. Fiona smirked from across the table, already engaged to Scott, a banker from a wealthy family who my parents adored. Naomi, home from her first semester at an expensive liberal arts college, my parents were paying for barely acknowledged Julian's existence. After Julian left that night, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "You're throwing your future away for some foreign nobody," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "He has nothing to offer you." I told her that Julian had everything that mattered, that he was kind and smart and hardworking, that I loved him. She laughed, actually laughed. "Love, Inez, love doesn't pay bills. That boy will drag you down." My father delivered the ultimatum the next morning at breakfast. "Either you break up with him or you're on your own." I looked at Fiona hoping for support. She avoided my eyes. I looked at Naomi, who just shrugged and went back to her phone. I chose Julian. I was 21 years old when my family cut me off completely. No more tuition money, no more health insurance, no more safety net. My mother packed my childhood bedroom into boxes and stored them in the garage, erasing me from the house like I'd never existed. Fiona and Naomi stopped answering my calls. Not because they were angry, but because our parents told them not to contact me and they obeyed without question. I dropped out of school. I couldn't afford tuition on my own. Julian and I moved into a tiny studio apartment that smelled like mildew and had a radiator that clanked all night. I worked 3 jobs. I was an administrative assistant during the day, a freelance coder at night, and a barista on weekends. I learned what it meant to be tired down to your bones. I learned to make a meal out of rice and whatever vegetables were on sale. I learned that pride tastes bitter when you're eating it for dinner. But I also learned that I was stronger than I'd ever known. 2 years crawled by. Julian graduated and got a job offer in San Francisco with a tech startup. It wasn't a huge salary, but it was stable, and it was in a city that felt like possibility. We got married at City Hall with 2 strangers as witnesses. I wore a white dress from Target. It was the happiest day of my life, and my family had no idea it happened. We moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a not great neighborhood. The walls were thin and the floors creaked, but it was ours. I enrolled part-time at San Francisco State University, determined to finish my degree. I took classes at night and worked during the day. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I'd see posts on social media sometimes. Fiona's lavish wedding with 300 guests and a dress that cost more than my entire year's rent. Naomi's study abroad photos from Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all funded by our parents. My mother's birthday posts celebrating her 2 wonderful daughters as if I'd never existed. It hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. But the pain became fuel. When I was 26, I finally graduated. I walked across that stage with Julian cheering louder than anyone, and I felt like I'd climbed a mountain with my bare hands. 3 days later, I started work at a small healthcare tech startup called MedAI. They were developing artificial intelligence applications for medical diagnostics, and they needed software engineers willing to work long hours for modest pay and a piece of the company. I was employee number 5. My starting salary was $62,000 a year, which felt like a fortune after years of scraping by. More importantly, I got a 5% equity stake in the company. I worked like a woman possessed. 60-hour weeks became 70. I learned everything I could about machine learning, neural networks, medical data analysis. I took on projects no one else wanted. I made myself indispensable. Julian supported me through all of it. He'd bring me dinner when I forgot to eat. He'd rub my shoulders when they knotted from hunching over a computer. He never complained when I fell asleep mid-conversation, exhausted from another 16-hour day. During those years, I kept tabs on my family from a distance. Social media made it easy to watch lives I was no longer part of. Fiona had 2 children and a house in the suburbs with crown molding and a 3-car garage. Her husband Scott worked in finance, and they vacationed in the Hamptons every summer. Naomi bounced between jobs, always looking for the next exciting opportunity, always funded by our parents when things didn't work out. My parents posted constantly about their grandchildren, their successful daughters, their blessed life. I was a ghost haunting the edges of their perfect family portrait. Then when I was 28, everything changed. A major tech conglomerate made an offer to acquire MedAI. The negotiation took months. The final price was $320 million. With my 5% stake, I stood to make $16 million before taxes. I remember the day the acquisition closed. I was sitting in a conference room with our CEO and the other early employees, and the lawyers pushed papers across the table, and just like that, I had more money than I'd ever imagined. After taxes, I walked away with approximately $11 million. Julian and I sat in our car in the parking lot afterward, both of us too stunned to speak. Finally, I started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind that comes when your brain can't process reality. Julian joined in and we sat there like 2 lunatics laughing until we cried. The first thing people ask when they hear a story like this is, "What did you buy?" They expect tales of sports cars and mansions and private jets. The truth is much more boring. We bought a modest three-bedroom house in the suburbs of San Jose for $900,000. Nice, but not ostentatious. We paid cash. We upgraded our 10-year-old sedan to a new Toyota Camry. We took a vacation to Hawaii and stayed in a nice hotel instead of a hostel. And then we invested the rest. Index funds, real estate, municipal bonds, boring, stable, smart investments. We met with financial advisors who taught us about tax-advantaged accounts and diversification and wealth preservation. We didn't tell anyone. Not friends, not coworkers, not family. Especially not family. I took a new job at the company that had acquired us working as a senior engineer, with a comfortable six-figure salary. Julian continued his career path. To the outside world, we were just a normal couple with normal jobs living a normal life. This is what's called stealth wealth. We had money, but you'd never know it by looking at us. We wore regular clothes from regular stores. We drove a practical car. We didn't flash designer logos or exotic vacation photos. We were in every visible way unremarkable, and that's exactly how I wanted it. Years passed quietly. We traveled when we wanted to, but always economically. We donated to charities anonymously. We lived well below our means and let our investments grow. We talked about having children someday, but for now we were content with each other and the life we'd built from nothing. I thought about my family sometimes, wondered if they ever thought about me, if they regretted their choice, if they even remembered I existed. But I didn't reach out, and neither did they. Until last November. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. I almost deleted it thinking it was spam. The subject line read, "From your mother." My hand hovered over the delete button for a solid minute before curiosity won. I opened it. "Dear Inez, I hope this message finds you well. It's been far too long since we've spoken. Your father's health has been declining, he's been struggling with diabetes, and it's made us reflect on what's truly important in life. Family. We should reconnect. It's time to heal old wounds. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times looking for the catch. The wording was stiff formal, like she'd drafted it carefully. There was no real apology, no acknowledgement of the 13 years of silence, just a vague suggestion that enough time had passed. 2 days later, Fiona sent a Facebook message. "Hey sis, Mom told me she reached out. I think it would be really nice to see you again. We've all missed you." Naomi texted, "Heard Mom emailed you. Would be cool to catch up." Julian found me staring at my phone that evening. "What's wrong?" I showed him the messages. He read them carefully, his engineering mind analyzing the data. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. Part of me is curious. Curious about what? Why now? After 13 years of nothing, why reach out now?" Julian sat down beside me. "Could be your dad's health, like your mom said. Could be guilt. Could be they genuinely want to reconnect. Or it could be something else." "Could be," he agreed. "But you won't know unless you engage. The question is whether you want to." I thought about it for 2 weeks. I drafted responses and deleted them. I imagined scenarios. I remembered being 21 and alone and terrified. I remembered every birthday they forgot, every milestone they missed. But I also remembered that these were the people who raised me flawed as they were. And maybe, just maybe, people could change. Finally, I replied to my mother's email. "I'm willing to talk." The response came within hours. She was thrilled. She wanted me to come to Chicago for Thanksgiving. The whole family would be there. It would be perfect. I agreed against Julian's cautious advice. We booked flights in a hotel room. I didn't tell them about the hotel. I let them assume we'd stay with them. But I needed that escape hatch, that space that was ours. As the date approached, I became increasingly anxious. What would I wear? What would we talk about? Would they judge Julian again? Would they ask about my life? I decided not to volunteer any information about my finances. If they asked what I did for work, I'd say I was a software engineer, which was true. If they asked where we lived, I'd say San Jose, which was also true. I wouldn't lie, but I wouldn't elaborate either. The night before we left, I stood in our closet picking out clothes. Nothing too nice, nothing that would signal money. Jeans, simple sweaters, my regular winter coat from 3 years ago. Julian came up behind me. You know you don't have to hide who you are, right? I'm not hiding. I'm just not advertising. There's a difference. Yes, I want to know if they actually want me, not my bank account. He kissed the top of my head. Just remember we can leave any time. You don't owe them anything. We flew into Chicago the day before Thanksgiving. The city looked exactly as I remembered, covered in early snowlights, twinkling against the gray November sky. We took a cab to the Peninsula Chicago, a five-star hotel downtown. Our room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It cost $800 a night, but I needed the luxury, the reminder that I wasn't that scared 21-year-old anymore. That evening, we drove to my parents' house. It looked smaller than I remembered. The same brick facade, the same front porch, but somehow diminished by time and distance. I rang the doorbell, my heart hammering. My mother answered. She'd aged. Her hair was gray now, styled carefully, but gray nonetheless. Lines creased her face that hadn't been there before. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she pulled me into a hug. Oh, Inez, you're here. You're really here. I stood stiffly in her embrace, not sure how to respond. She smelled the same, like Chanel No. 5 and hairspray. My father appeared behind her, moving slowly with a cane I didn't remember him needing. Diabetes, I remembered. He'd lost weight. His face was gaunt. Inez, he said, his voice rough. Good to see you, kiddo. Kiddo. He used to call me that when I was small. Fiona emerged from the living room, immaculate as always in cashmere and pearls. She was 38 now, still beautiful, but with a tightness around her eyes that spoke of stress. Her husband Scott followed, drink in hand, assessing Julian and me with the cool calculation of a banker. Naomi bounced down the stairs, phone in hand, designer athleisure hugging her frame. She was 31, still chasing the aesthetic of eternal youth. She gave me a brief hug that smelled of expensive perfume. We settled into the living room, the space heavy with 13 years of unspoken words. My mother had made coffee and put out cookies like this was a normal family gathering and not a reunion after more than a decade of silence. The conversation started carefully. How was our flight? Fine. How's the weather in California, Nice? Do we like San Francisco? It's actually San Jose, but yes. Then my mother asked, So, Inez, what do you do for work? I'm a software engineer. Oh, a pause. That's nice. Still doing the computer thing. I felt Julian's hand find mine under the table. Fiona jumped in. We're so busy with the kids. They're in private school now, which is just incredibly expensive, but you know you want the best for your children. How old are they? I asked, even though I knew from Facebook. 8 and 6. Connor is 8. Madison is 6. They're amazing but exhausting. Being a mother is the hardest job in the world. She said this while her mother sat right there as if she'd forgotten Diana had raised 3 daughters. Naomi chimed in, I'm actually between jobs right now. The marketing field is so unstable. I was at this fashion company, but they downsized. I knew from her Instagram that she'd quit to become an influencer, but I said nothing. The evening wore on. Dinner was served pot roast and potatoes, the same meal my mother had made every Sunday when I was growing up. We ate and made small talk, and it was all so painfully surface level. Nobody asked about the missing years. Nobody acknowledged the elephant in the room. It was as if I'd just been on a long vacation, and now I was back, and everything was fine. When Julian and I left that night climbing into our rental car, I felt exhausted. That was strange, Julian said. That's one word for it. They didn't ask about us, about our life, about anything real. No, they didn't. Does that bother you? I thought about it. Yes and no. Part of me is relieved. Part of me is disappointed. What do you want to happen tomorrow? I have no idea. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright. We slept late at the hotel, ordered room service breakfast, and tried to mentally prepare ourselves for the day ahead. I'd brought a simple navy dress and flats. Julian wore slacks and a button-down shirt. We looked presentable but not wealthy. Perfect. We arrived at my parents' house at 2 in the afternoon as requested. Cars lined the street. I recognized Fiona's Range Rover and what must have been Naomi's leased BMW. Inside, chaos. Fiona's children ran through the house high on sugar and excitement. Scott stood in the kitchen with my father, both nursing beers. Naomi was taking selfies in front of the dining room table already set with my mother's good china. My mother recruited all the daughters to help in the kitchen. For a moment, it felt almost normal. The four of us moving around the familiar space, Diana directing traffic like a general commanding troops. We made small talk. Fiona complained about how hard it was to find good help these days. Naomi showed us her Instagram, pointing out photos that had gotten over 1,000 likes. My mother fretted about the turkey being dry. Then Fiona turned to me as she stirred gravy. "So, where did you guys stay last night? Did you find a cheap motel somewhere?" The question was casual, but I heard the judgment underneath. Of course I would stay in a cheap motel. That's what people like me did. "We stayed at a hotel downtown," I said evenly. Naomi looked up from her phone. "Which one? Those places are crazy expensive." "Just a comfortable place." "But which one specifically?" Fiona pressed. "The Peninsula." Naomi's eyes widened. "The Peninsula isn't that like 5 stars?" "It's nice," I said, trying to move past it. "Nice, Inez, that place is like $800 a night. How can you afford that on a software engineer salary?" I could have lied. I could have said we got a deal, or Julian's company paid for it, or we'd saved up. But I was tired of hiding. "We can afford it because we're comfortable financially." My mother set down the spoon she'd been using. "How comfortable?" And that's when my phone sitting on the kitchen counter buzzed with a notification. I'd forgotten to silence it. The screen lit up with a preview from my investment app. "Your portfolio balance has increased by..." Naomi was closest. Her eyes went straight to the screen. I saw her face change, saw the moment she registered what she was seeing. "Inez," she said slowly, "is that your bank account?" "It's an investment account." "But that number, it says over $1 million. The kitchen went silent. Even the children in the other room seemed to sense something had shifted. Fiona moved closer, trying to see my phone. "Let me see that." I picked up my phone, but the damage was done. My mother's voice was sharp. "Inez, what is going on?" I took a breath. There was no going back now. "I've been fortunate in my career. I received a significant amount of money when the company I worked for was acquired 6 years ago." "How significant?" Scott's voice came from the doorway. He'd wandered over a banker instincts activated. "Around $11 million. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. The ripples spread slowly, shock registering on each face. My mother gripped the counter. $11 million. Yes. Fiona's face flushed red. "And you never told us. In 6 years, you never once mentioned that you're a millionaire." "Why would I?" "Because we're your family." Naomi's voice rose. 6 years, Inez. 6 years you've had this money and said nothing." My father appeared in the doorway, leaning on his cane. "What's all the shouting about?" Diana turned to him. "Your daughter has $11 million and never told us." His face went pale, then red. "Is this true?" "Yes." We moved to the dining room. Thanksgiving dinner forgotten. The family arranged themselves around the table. But this wasn't a celebration. This was an inquisition. My mother spoke first, her voice shaking. "How could you keep this from us?" "I didn't keep it from you. We haven't spoken in over a decade." There was nothing to tell. "But we're talking now," Fiona said. "We reached out to you, and you still said nothing." "You reached out 2 weeks ago. Was I supposed to lead with my bank balance?" Naomi stood up, pacing. "This is insane. Do you know how much I've been struggling? I lost my job last year. I've been barely getting by." I looked at her carefully. "You lost your job because your Instagram says you quit to be an influencer." Her face went scarlet. "How dare you stalk my social media?" "It's public, Naomi, and it's not stalking to look at posts you literally share with the world." My father's voice cut through. "Inez, you know I've been struggling with medical bills." "I know you have diabetes, yes. Do you know how much it costs? The medications, the doctor visits, the specialists?" "I can imagine." "Can you..." Diana's voice was bitter. "Can you really imagine while you're sitting on $11 million? Fiona leaned forward. "My children's school costs $40,000 a year per child. That's $80,000 total. Do you know what kind of stress that puts on us?" I looked at her designer watch, her luxury handbag sitting on the chair beside her. "Then maybe send them to public school." "Public school? Are you serious? I want my children to have opportunities." "Like the opportunities you had, the ones our parents paid for." "That's different." "How?" Scott interrupted. Look, Inez family helps family, that's how it works. Is it? I looked around the table. Because when I needed help when I was working 3 jobs and living in an apartment the size of this dining room, where was the family then? My mother's face crumpled. That was your choice. You chose to leave. The words hit me like a physical blow. I chose. You gave me an ultimatum. You told me to choose between the man I loved and my family. That's not a choice, that's extortion. Robert's voice was stern. We were looking out for your future. No, you were controlling my life. And when I wouldn't comply, you cut me off completely. Not a phone call, not a birthday card, nothing. For 13 years. Fiona stood up. Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. You clearly turned out fine. I turned out fine despite you, not because of you. So what? Naomi threw her hands up. You're going to punish us forever. We're family. We made mistakes, but we're trying to fix things now. I laughed a harsh sound. Is that what this is? Diana reached across the table toward me. Honey, please, your father is sick. Can't you find it in your heart to help? Help with what exactly? Medical bills? You haven't even told me the amount of. Robert cleared his throat. About $80,000. That's what we owe. And you have insurance. Yes, but it doesn't cover everything. I sat back in my chair looking at these people who shared my blood but felt like strangers. Let me ask you something. When did you decide to contact me, before or after you found out about Grandfather William's will? The room went very still. My mother's face paled. How do you know about that? I may not be part of this family, but I still get legal notices. Grandpa left his estate to his direct descendants, who meet certain criteria. Descendants with families. Fiona's divorced, Naomi's single. That left just your branch of the family tree. Or it would have if I still existed in your world. Fiona's voice was tight. That has nothing to do with this. Doesn't it Grandpa died 3 months ago? You contacted me 2 weeks ago. That's quite a coincidence. Diana stood up. You don't understand. That inheritance, it's family money. It should stay in the family. I am family, or I was. You made sure I wasn't anymore. Naomi's voice was desperate now. Okay, fine. Yes, the timing is related, but that doesn't change the fact that you have $11 million and we're struggling. I looked at her, really looked at her. You're not struggling. You're living beyond your means and calling it struggle. There's a difference. How dare you? Fiona hissed. You don't know anything about our lives. You're right. I don't. Just like you don't know anything about mine. You never asked. Not once in the past 2 days have any of you asked about my life, about what I went through, about how I survived. My father slammed his hand on the table. We're asking now. Why didn't you help us? The question hung in the air. Why didn't I help them? Not could I help them. Not would I consider helping them. Why didn't I? As if I had some obligation that I'd shirked. I stood up slowly. Julian stood with me. You want to know why I didn't help you? Because you never helped me. You threw me away like garbage when I didn't fit your plan for my life. You didn't care if I succeeded or failed, lived or died. You erased me from this family like I never existed. And now, 13 years later, you suddenly care. Not because you missed me, not because you regretted what you did, but because I have something you want. Diana was crying now. That's not fair. Fair. My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. You want to talk about fair? What's fair about cutting off your daughter for falling in love? What's fair about ignoring her existence for over a decade? What's fair about only reaching out when you need money? Fiona grabbed her purse. I knew this was a mistake. You were always selfish. Selfish? I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school after you all abandoned me. I built a career from nothing. I earned every cent of that money through work you can't even comprehend. And somehow I'm selfish for not handing it over to people who treated me like trash. Scott stood, putting a hand on Fiona's shoulder. She has a point, honey. Whose side are you on? Fiona snapped at him. I'm just saying we can't really blame her for being cautious. Naomi pointed at me. You're going to let your own father suffer because you're bitter about the past. I looked at my father, really looked at him. He seemed smaller, somehow, diminished by age and illness. And despite everything, I felt something. Not love exactly, but not hate either. How much do you owe? I asked quietly. I told you, 80,000. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, made a transfer right there at the table. My father's phone dinged. He looked at it. His face went slack with shock. What did you do? Diana whispered. I paid his medical bills. All of them. Robert stared at his phone like it might bite him. You just, you transferred $80,000. Yes. Just like that. Just like that. Diana reached for my hand. Thank you. Oh, sweetheart, thank you. I pulled my hand away. Don't thank me. That money is for medical bills only. If I find out a single dollar went to anything else, I'll never speak to any of you again. Fiona sat back down deflated. So that's it. You pay for Dad and nothing else. I turned to face her fully. What did you expect, Fiona? That I'd write you a check for your Range Rover payment, that I'd fund Naomi's influencer lifestyle. We're family, she said weakly. Family shows up, family cares, family doesn't disappear for 13 years and then reappear demanding money. Naomi tried a different approach. What about everything Mom and Dad did for you growing up? Don't you owe them? They did their legal obligation as parents. I don't owe them for choosing to have children. My mother looked wounded. Is that really how you see it? How should I see it? You fed me and clothed me and gave me shelter. Congratulations, you did the bare minimum required by law. But love, support, acceptance, those were conditional. And the condition was that I live my life exactly as you dictated. Robert's voice was cold now. So you're punishing us? No, I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I walked toward the door. Julian followed. My family sat frozen at the table, the Thanksgiving meal getting cold, the perfect family gathering shattered. At the door, I turned back. You asked why I let you suffer, but you never asked how I survived. You never asked what it was like to be 21 and completely alone. You never asked if I was okay, if I needed help, if I was safe. For 13 years, you never asked. And now you want me to care about your suffering? The suffering of people who can afford private schools and luxury cars and designer clothes. Do you hear how that sounds? Diana stood up, wobbling slightly. Please, don't go like this. We can work this out. Work what out? The fact that this entire reunion was about money, that you don't actually want a relationship with me. You want access to my bank account. That's not true, Fiona said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Tell me honestly, if I didn't have money, would we be here right now? Would you have reached out? Silence. That's what I thought. Naomi stood up. Fine, go. Run away like you always do. But don't pretend you're some kind of victim. You have $11 million. You could help us and not even notice the money gone, but you won't because you're bitter and petty and you want us to suffer like you did. Her words hit exactly the way she intended, but I didn't flinch. You're right about one thing. I could write you all checks and not notice the money gone. But that's not the point. The point is, you're not entitled to the fruits of my labor just because we share DNA. I earned that money. I sacrificed for it. I worked when I was so tired I could barely stand. I taught myself skills you wouldn't even understand. I took risks. And I did it all without you. So no, I won't fund your lifestyle. Not now, not ever. I opened the door. The cold November air rushed in. Wait, my mother called out. At least think about it, please. I looked back at her. For a moment, I saw her as she was when I was small, young and beautiful and full of certainty. But that woman was gone, replaced by this stranger, who only saw me as a resource to be extracted. I already did think about it. For 13 years, I thought about what it would be like if you came back, if you apologized, if you wanted me in your life again. I thought about forgiveness and second chances. But this, I gestured to the table, the forgotten meal, the faces full of greed and entitlement. This isn't what I imagined. Julian took my hand. We walked out together. In the rental car driving back to the hotel through the dark Chicago streets, Julian finally spoke. Are you okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, actually I am. That was intense. It was necessary. Do you regret paying your dad's bills? I shook my head. No, that was the right thing to do. But not for him, for me. So I can look at myself in the mirror and know I'm better than they are. Julian smiled. You are better than they are. I'm different than they are. And I'm finally okay with that. We spent the rest of Thanksgiving weekend in our hotel room, ordering room service and watching movies. My phone buzzed with messages. First from my mother begging me to reconsider. Then from Fiona saying I'd embarrassed the family. Then from Naomi alternating between apologies and accusations. Sunday morning, sitting in the hotel restaurant for breakfast, I made a decision. I blocked all 3 numbers. Julian watched me do it. You're sure completely? No going back from that. Good. There's nothing to go back to. 6 months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and Julian and I made changes to our life. We moved to Seattle, a fresh start in a new city where nobody knew us or our history. I took a position as director of engineering at a growing tech company. Julian got promoted to senior project manager at his firm. We bought a house. Nothing ostentatious, just a comfortable 4-bedroom craftsman with a garden and a view of the mountains. We paid cash because we could. Life settled into a pleasant rhythm. I discovered I loved Seattle. The coffee culture, the progressive politics, the proximity to nature. We hiked on weekends. We made friends with our neighbors. We were happy in a way that felt earned, not given. I started volunteering at a nonprofit that taught coding to underprivileged kids, especially girls. Every Saturday morning, I'd show up at the community center and spend 3 hours teaching teenagers how to write Python, how to think logically, how to solve problems. I saw myself in them, these smart kids who just needed someone to believe in them. One day, a 17-year-old girl stayed after class. Her name was Maria, and she reminded me of myself at that age. Quiet, observant, hungry to learn. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. How did you learn all this? Like, did you go to a fancy school? I smiled. State school. And I dropped out for a while because I couldn't afford it. Her eyes widened. Really? But you're like really good at this. I am now, but I had to teach myself a lot of it while working 3 jobs. Why'd you have to do that? Long story. But the short version is, I didn't have family support. She nodded slowly. I get that. My dad doesn't think girls should go to college, says it's a waste of money. My heart clenched. What do you think? I think I want to learn. I want to build things. I want to matter. I wrote down my email address and handed it to her. You already matter. But if you need help, resources, advice, anything, you email me. Okay. She took the paper like it was precious. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Because someone should have helped me. And they didn't. So I'm going to help you instead. Driving home that day, I realized something. The money didn't matter. Not really. What mattered was the freedom it gave me to choose, to help people I wanted to help, to live according to my values, to say no to people who tried to use me. In May, I got a letter from a law firm in Chicago. My father had passed away due to complications from diabetes. The funeral had already happened. I hadn't been informed in time to attend. The letter was simply notification, cold and legal. Inside the envelope was another letter, handwritten, shaky writing I recognized as my father's. Inez, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I wanted to write this before the end while I still had time. I was wrong. About Julian, about cutting you off, about everything. I was proud and stubborn, and I let my pride destroy our relationship. Your mother wanted to reach out years ago, but I wouldn't let her. I told myself you'd made your choice and had to live with it. But really, I was the one who made a choice and I made the wrong one. I know the Thanksgiving reunion didn't go well. I know we hurt you again. But I want you to know, watching you that day, seeing the strong, successful woman you became, I was proud. I never said it, but I was. You did it all on your own, and that's more than any of your sisters can say. I'm sorry I won't get to tell you this in person. I'm sorry for a lot of things. Be happy, kiddo. You deserve it. Dad. I cried reading that letter. Not the angry tears of betrayal, but the sad tears of lost time. He was proud of me. He was sorry. And it was too late for it to matter. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Julian found me there an hour later. What happened? My father died. He held me while I cried. When the tears finally stopped, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Do you regret not going back? Julian asked. No, I made the right choice, but I wish things had been different. They could have been. He chose not to make them different until it was too late. I know. That evening, I called a florist in Chicago and had them send a large arrangement to the funeral home. The card read simply, "Rest in peace, Dad. I forgive you." And I did forgive him. Not because he deserved it, but because carrying anger was exhausting, and I was tired of being angry. My mother sent a short email thanking me for the flowers. I didn't respond. Some doors once closed should stay that way. A year has passed since that Thanksgiving. I'm 34 now, and my life is unrecognizable from what it was. Julian and I are talking seriously about starting a family. We've created a life we love surrounded by people who value us for who we are, not what we have. Last month, I did something that felt important. I met with an attorney and a financial advisor, and together we established the Second Chances Scholarship Fund. It's designed to help students who've been financially cut off by their families but want to continue their education. The application doesn't ask about grades or test scores or extracurricular activities. It asks about resilience, about what you've overcome, about what you'll do with a second chance. We funded it with $2 million to start. That's enough to support about 40 students a year with full tuition, room, and board. 40 people who won't have to work 3 jobs. 40 people who'll get the support I never had. When I approved the first round of scholarships, reading through the applications, I cried. These kids, these amazing kids who'd survived neglect and abuse and abandonment, who still believed in themselves enough to apply, they deserved everything. Maria from my coding class was one of the recipients. She called me sobbing with joy, saying she couldn't believe it was real. I told her it was very real, and she'd earned it, and I expected great things from her. The scholarship announcement made local news in Seattle. A reporter asked me why I'd started it. I told her, because I know what it's like to be thrown away by the people who are supposed to love you. And I know what it's like to survive anyway. If my money can help someone else survive and thrive, then that's the best possible use of it. The story ran with the headline, "Tech Director Creates Scholarship for Family Rejected Students." It went regional, then national. I got emails from around the country, people sharing their stories of estrangement and survival. One email came from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "From your sister." I almost deleted it, but curiosity won again. It was from Naomi. "Inez, I saw the article about your scholarship fund. I wanted to say I'm proud of you. I know I don't have the right to say that anymore. I know I was awful to you. We all were. I've been in therapy for the past 6 months, dealing with a lot of stuff about our family and my role in it. My therapist asked me to write you a letter, not to send necessarily, but to get my thoughts out. But I think you should see it. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except maybe someday a chance to apologize properly. What we did to you was unforgivable. What I did was unforgivable. You were my sister, and I abandoned you because it was easier than standing up to Mom and Dad. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. You don't have to respond. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. Naomi." I read it 3 times. It sounded genuine. It sounded like she'd done real work on herself. But I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready. I saved the email in a folder labeled "Someday Maybe." Perhaps in a few years, when the wounds were less raw, I'd reach out. Or perhaps I wouldn't. The choice was mine, and that felt powerful. Julian asked me what I wanted for my 34th birthday. I thought about it for a long time. I want to take all the kids from my coding class on a trip to a tech company. Show them what's possible. So we did. We rented a bus and took 25 teenagers to visit the offices of the company I worked for. They toured the facilities, met with engineers, saw the cafeteria with its free gourmet food, the game rooms, the creative spaces. Maria pulled me aside at the end of the day. "Is this really your life?" "It is. And you really did it all yourself. I had help from my husband and some good mentors along the way. But yeah, mostly myself." That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Watching her face full of hope and possibility, I realized something. My family had asked why I let them suffer, but that was the wrong question. The right question was, why did I survive? I survived because I had to, because giving up wasn't an option, because somewhere deep inside I believed I was worth fighting for even when nobody else did. I survived because I learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who support you, who love you when you're failing as much as when you're succeeding. Julian is my family. Maria and the other kids I mentor, they're my family. The colleagues who celebrated my promotion, and the friends who check in when I'm quiet for too long, they're my family. The people who share my DNA but couldn't see my value, they're not family. They're just people I used to know. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd given them money that Thanksgiving. If I'd written the checks they wanted funded. Their lifestyles played the role of the rich relative. I think I know. They would have taken the money and still not seen me. I would have bought temporary peace but lost myself in the process. The resentment would have grown until it consumed whatever relationship we might have salvaged. Instead, I chose myself. I chose my worth. I chose to protect what I'd built from people who wanted to tear it down for parts. Was it selfish? Maybe. But self-preservation isn't selfishness. It's survival. And I'm very good at surviving. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between family and yourself? Have you ever had to protect your peace from people who should have protected it for you? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one, and your stories matter. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about navigating family money and finding your worth. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who's struggling with the same choice I faced. You're stronger than you know. You deserve people who see your value. And sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. I wish you all the courage to set boundaries, the strength to honor them, and the peace that comes from living authentically. Take care of yourselves, you're worth it.